This program is provided by Universal Genesis.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we turn massive stacks of research into concentrated knowledge designed just for you.
Today we are tackling, well, a giant of Western history, G.W.F. Hegel, and I think you found the perfect key to unlock him.
We did. We're not going to wade through, the abstract swamp of Geist or spirit or mind, whatever you want to call it.
No, instead we're looking at pure architectural design.
Exactly. The sources gave us this incredible visual, this map of his entire philosophical system. It's not a static list. It's not a flat archive. It's a dynamic structure.
A spiral staircase, vertical bookshelf.
And that image is our mission today. It's a shortcut into his whole way of thinking.
We're going to figure out which authors he actually put on those shelves, who he intentionally left off, and why this brilliant design ultimately fails as a practical way to transfer knowledge.
Such an effective metaphor because it immediately shows you how different Hegel was from everyone who came before. I mean, you really only have a few foundational models for organizing knowledge.
Right. First, there's Plato. His model is just a straight vertical line. You ascend from the world of shadows directly up toward the ideal forms.
One straight shot to the truth.
Then you've got Aristotle. The sources called him the original librarian, which I love.
Me too. It just clicks.
His system is all horizontal shelving. He's the ultimate classifier. Physics goes here, ethics over there, poetics in that corner. It's all very neat.
And it's reproducible. Anyone can follow that system.
Exactly. And then Hegel comes along, throws out the straight line, throws out the flat shelves, and builds this dynamic spiral.
And that tells you right away, his system isn't just about hierarchy. It's about movement. A necessary structured movement.
So let's unpack that spiral structure because it's everything. The verticality is pretty simple.
Higher concepts contain the lower ones. It's a hierarchy.
But the spiral motion, that's the engine. It's this idea of an ascent while returning.
And that engine is the famous dialectic. It's driven by the negation of the negation, or Aufhebung.
We should really pause on Aufhebung. It's not just a word. It's the operating system for this whole library.
It's so much more than just contradiction.
It really is. The best translation is probably sublation or supersession. It's a three-part process every concept goes through to move up a step on the spiral.
Okay, so first, the original concept is canceled. It's negated.
But, and this is the key, it's also preserved. The essential truth of it remains.
And then finally, it's raised up to a new, higher level of understanding where those two things are integrated.
Exactly. Canceled, preserved, and raised up all at once. So a concept returns to a similar place, but on a new level of maturity.
It's a terrifyingly elegant system. It implies that history itself, or even nature, isn't random. It's a systematic spiral.
Which is why his bookshelf is so important. Now that we get the mechanism, let's see how he actually stocks the thing, his encyclopedia. His choices tell you who he thought completed each step of reason's journey.
Right. So we start at the foundation, the base floor. Step 1, logic. This is pure thought before it even touches the world.
The foundational book here, centuries old, is Aristotle. His Organon, his metaphysics. That's the basis of all formal logical thought.
And then you move up from that base to a more modern certainty.
And that has to be Descartes. His meditations. I think, therefore I am. The self-certainty of thought is established.
Okay, so Aristotle gives us the tools. Descartes gives us the certainty. Who's at the top of the logic section?
That would be Kant. Specifically, the critique of pure reason. Hegel puts him there because Kant represents the absolute peak of what he calls the philosophy of understanding.
The very system Hegel intends to overcome.
Precisely. Kant is the essential barrier that must be sublated, overcome, preserved, and raised up for Hegel's own system of reason to work.
That makes perfect sense. So once thought is established, we move into step 2, natural philosophy. This is spirit moving out into the physical world.
And here, Hegel is only interested in the great system builders, the people who demonstrated law and necessity in nature.
So for mechanics, the system of external regularity, it has to be Newton.
Of course. The Principia, the highest system of necessary laws for motion and gravity.
What about physics and chemistry? I mean, that's where all the change was happening during the Enlightenment.
He picks the systematizers. So Lavoisier for chemistry, because he turned it from alchemy into a real science, and Kepler for the mathematical laws of the planets.
So the criteria is strict.
Right.
You only get a spot if you can show a deterministic objective law, no guesswork.
None. And then for organic life, he actually goes back. He returns to Aristotle's History of Animals.
Aristotle again.
For Hegel, he represented the highest understanding of teleological nature, the idea that nature has an inherent purpose.
Okay, so now we ascend to the next level, objective spirit. This is where we get into human interaction, law, morality, the state.
Right. And for law, or Recht, he puts Hugo Grotius on the shelf.
Grotius, why him specifically?
Because Grotius on the law of war and peace established a secular system of natural law. It was the necessary starting point for the modern state, moving beyond pure divine right.
Then as you move up from law, you hit morality, moralitate.
And that's Kant again. The critique of practical reason, the categorical imperative. It's the highest formal system of individual duty.
But Hegel doesn't stop there. This is where a lot of people get tripped up.
This is the critical leap. For Hegel, that kind of individual abstract morality is incomplete. It's contradictory on its own. It has to ascend to ethics or Sittlichkeit.
Well, what's the actual difference between those two, moralitate and Sittlichkeit?
So moralitate is your inner abstract conscience. It's your duty as an isolated individual. But Sittlichkeit is concrete, communal ethics. It's freedom as it's actually realized in institutions.
Like the family, civil society, and the state.
And the state. So Kant is the peak of the individual conscience, but who's the completer of communal life?
Let me guess. Aristotle.
Aristotle. The Nicomachean Ethics. Hegel is adopting Aristotle's emphasis on the polis, the state, as the necessary home for a virtuous life.
Okay, that clarifies it. The shelf of abstract duty versus the shelf of concrete community. And that brings us to the very top, absolute spirit.
Art, religion, and philosophy itself.
So for art,
He's got Friedrich Schiller, who linked beauty to freedom, and Aristotle's Poetics. But the highest expression of art for Hegel was Greek tragedy. Sophocles is at the pinnacle.
and religion.
No single author there. The entire body of Christian theology is positioned as the highest realization of absolute religion.
And finally, at the very, very top of the spiral,
Is philosophy itself. A direct line flowing through Aristotle, Kant, Fichte, Schelling, and culminating necessarily in one Georg W. F. Hegel. He saw his own system as the completion of the entire journey.
it's an incredibly ambitious, fully stocked library. But, like you said earlier, what's just as revealing is who he leaves out. The exclusions tell you everything about how rigid this system is.
This is where you see the architecture in action. I mean, he couldn't put a book on the shelf if it didn't serve the necessary story of reason developing itself. If a theory was based on some kind of, outside chance or agreement, it had to go.
And the most glaring omission, for me anyway, in that whole section on the state is Thomas Hobbes. How do you talk about the modern state and not mention Leviathan?
You can't unless you're Hegel. He had to leave him off. Hobbes's social contract model is completely opposed to the Hegelian project.
Because Hobbes starts with individual fear, and the state is just this artificial contract we all agree to.
Exactly. It's an external agreement. Hegel needed an internal organic model where the state grows necessarily out of the family and civil society. For Hegel, the state is the realization of freedom, not some deal you make because you're scared. Hobbes just didn't fit the narrative.
That structural necessity is just fascinating. The other huge exclusion is Francis Bacon. I mean, he's the champion of induction, of empiricism. That's the method that fueled the scientific revolution. Why dismiss him?
Because Hegel's system had to be, in his words, the self-movement of reason. If your ultimate truth depends on gathering data from the outside world on induction, then the system isn't self-contained. It's contingent. It's incomplete.
So he relegates observation and all that to a lower shelf, to natural philosophy.
Pretty much. For Hegel, Bacon's method is just gathering sensory particulars. True philosophy, true reason, had to be 100% deductive, a kind of logical cyclone where the universal concept creates its own opposition and then resolves it at a higher level.
So admitting induction to the top floors would have collapsed the whole staircase.
It would have. Excluding Bacon was a necessary precondition for the whole thing to work.
Which, leads us right to the big skeptical question. The one I think every student has when they first encounter this stuff. Is the dialectic just playing with opposite words?
Is it just concept magic? That is the essential critique.
Right. Does it actually tell us anything about the real world?
Well, Hegel's defense was that these contradictions aren't just in our heads. He argued they are already present in the world, and his natural philosophy was his attempt to prove it.
Okay, so let's use his own examples from the nature shelf.
Okay.
The dialectic in action.
Sure. Think about basic mechanics. You have space. What is space? It's things coexisting at the same time. Then you have time, which is the opposite. It's succession, one moment after another, non-simultaneity.
Okay, so space is A, time is non-A, they're opposites.
Right. So what's the higher concept that resolves and integrates them?
Movement.
Movement. To move, you have to occupy different spaces at different times. It's the Aufhebung of space and time.
That's a strong example. What's another one?
Think about Newton's laws. You have inertia, which is the tendency of a body to stay as it is. And you have external force, which is the necessity of change.
So retention versus change.
And the conflict between them produces the necessity of motion itself, or the classic one. Gravity, the force of concentration, pulling things together, versus centrifugal force, the force of dispersion, flinging things apart.
And their resolution is a stable orbit.
A stable orbit. So Hegel's argument is that the dialectic isn't some arbitrary game. It's a description of real tensions that are necessary in nature, which science later formalized with math.
So he's finding the deep philosophical meaning in the laws that Newton and others had already discovered.
Precisely. But, and this is the critical scientific flaw, his natural philosophy was completely useless to working scientists.
Wait, say more about that. If he's just finding meaning in science that's already been done, isn't that just confirmation bias dressed up as philosophy?
That's the devastating question, isn't it? He was providing a philosophical retroactive reading. He didn't predict gravity. He just gave it a new philosophical interpretation after the fact.
So for Galileo or Newton, his system was, what, irrelevant?
Completely irrelevant concept play. It didn't help them run a single experiment or advance science 1 inch.
Wow. That's a huge problem for a system that claims to be the completion of all knowledge. He's not completing science, he's just re-explaining it to himself.
And that leads us to the final critique of the whole design, the searchability problem. The failure is in the structure itself.
Right, the bookshelf is meaning ordered, not indexed. The sources made a great point. You can't just look under L for law to find Grotius.
No, you have to know the entire story. You have to know that it's on the path of objective spirit, ascending from right to morality. It's totally impractical.
Which really highlights that final contrast between the artistic philosopher and the practical librarian.
Let's compare Hegel and Aristotle one last time.
Aristotle's library is reproducible. It uses clear categories: physics, ethics, logic. Any trained person can organize it. It's a shared public system.
It's why our universities are still structured that way.
Whereas Hegel's library is based entirely on the unique, private, non-negotiable logic of its creator.
It's a private system. Only the author can maintain it. It's a magnificent piece of theoretical art, a worldview installation, but as a library, it's a fatal design.
And the age of that kind of thinker, the philosopher king who could even attempt such a thing, Aristotle, maybe Aquinas and Hegel, that age is just over.
It has to be. The explosion of knowledge in the last 2 centuries makes a total Hegelian synthesis impossible. I mean, how do you fit quantum physics and AI ethics into that one deductive spiral? You can't.
So the role of philosophy has to change. It can't be about building the one ultimate system anymore.
No, it has to shift to being more of an editor or a meta-curator. The job now is to provide highlights, context, to make connections.
Like the shape of metaphysics this year.
Exactly, or analyzing scientific trends. It's a practical response to the impossibility of the Hegelian dream. We curate and edit now. We don't build the whole world from scratch.
So that brings us back to you, the listener. We went on this journey, and I think we have 2 critical takeaways. First, Hegel's big idea that the world itself seems structured by contradiction, that the dialectic isn't just wordplay.
Right. It's a description of real tensions in nature. And second, that when you organize knowledge, you have to decide what you're doing. Are you building a beautiful, necessary story like Hegel the artist?
Or a useful shared tool like Aristotle the librarian?
That's the choice.
Which leaves us with a final thought. Since Hegel's vast unified system was designed purely for philosophical necessity and failed precisely because it could only ever be organized by him, we have to wonder, does any truly unique, singular, and necessary philosophical worldview inherently become nothing more than a magnificent, non-transferable work of art?
This program is provided by Universal Genesis.